Okay, hello and welcome to the Hedonistic Way at Midday show. I'm Renee Main and I have just got the most glorious guest for you guys today. And she has an absolute burning passion for play. She is a pure expression and unedited expression of our feminine, and she's super passionate about men and women finding their own unique flavor and essence and opening up that whole treasure chest of sensuality and whatever that means for us, with the life force of permission and pleasure oozing through her veins. She's liberating people all over the globe. She moves like a panther, like a puma, with poise, confidence, and knowing, and a beauty that you just can't help but take your eyes off, and knowing that there's just a depth that is this infinite well of knowledge and wisdom, and I can't wait to tap into that today. She's the creator of the Liberated Woman and Divine Play. She's all things sacred dance, sexuality, and emotional intimacy. I'm so honored to introduce you to Ramya Jade. I had to think about that, how the pronunciation of that again. Welcome, gorgeous.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, we started off having this conversation and I was like, we'll just have to pause this so we can share it with everyone, because it was so beautiful. And I was asking you about how to pronounce your name and you were telling me about your name. So why don't we start there, because it's such a beautiful, I just got a new level of that depth of understanding of who you are and what you're about. So tell everybody about your name and how it come about.
Oh, thank you. So it's an interesting piece of my history, and it's been one of those things that I've been sharing my name on social media platforms as Ramya Jade for a long time, and I haven't wanted to just kind of have it as Jade, although when people actually know me, they're like, oh yeah, they call me Jade.
Yeah.
The Ramya piece actually resonates with me really deeply, and I got given this name by a teacher of mine many, many years ago, and as I sat with it and meditated with it and like really tuned in with the frequency of what Ramya means, I got really deeply initiated into this sense of the beauty of creation in all things, light and dark. And when I felt into it, it was like this essence of nature, that everything in nature, that there's nothing that's not divine, from the flower that rises to the shit that fertilizes it, and how symbolic this is and how deep and dear this is to my heart and my essence and my passion. And it's like reminding me of that everything in life is sacred, everything from all of the contrasting experiences, the challenges and the pieces that we love and the pieces that we're actually really like triggered by, all of that is part of the divine. It's part of the divine play. And so I love to keep the name Ramya as a reminder, and also it keeps me in alignment with that intention, with that integrity of what my passion is and why I'm so moved to share the work that I do. It's so dear to my heart and aligned. So it's not, it actually is a reminder, and it calls me into alignment. So, thank you for letting me explain that.
Thank you. When you talk about divine play and you mentioned, the worlds, tell me, what does divine play, what is it, and is it God? Is it, how do you see, is it the illusion? Are we in a dream? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think about it in terms of almost, there's a word that's called Leela, and it's like the cosmic joke of it all. It's like there's been times in my life, there's been many times in my life where I've been deeply challenged. I've worked through a lot of trauma in my childhood and all of these things. And it's almost like one of those realizations that I have, and working with hundreds of women and men, you know, all like over the last, I don't know, 5-6 years or whatever it's been. What I recognize is that it's almost like everything in life, if we're able to actually take the gold from it, sift the gold from whatever it is that we're experiencing, then there's always like an alchemy. There's always some growth. There's always something that's really deeply valuable, even in the most horrendous trauma. And one of the things that I feel that's deeply true for me is that it's actually because of all of the stuff that I've been through in my life that gives me depth, that gives me character, that makes me passionate, that makes me have compassion and want to work with people on such a deep level. And ironically, it's like the thing that you wouldn't wish on anyone, but there's this almost like this cosmic love that would initiate you through the shit so that you can be more of yourself anyway. It's like this. It's like the beauty and the love even in the trauma of it, and actually providing tools and stuff to be able to move through it. But it's not linear. It's not like, you know, it's not like, okay, so this trigger's going to happen and, you know, that looks like fun right then. You know, it's not necessarily like that. Life isn't, you know, my experience of life is not like that. But there's a dance. So like another word for the play piece would be the dance of it. You know? And like even the like falling over, the movements, if you can actually like be with those movements, like there's different choreographies, there's different choreographers that actually incorporate like falling and like getting back up and all of these parts as the expression, the fullness of life. So rather than being, you know, opposition to what is, how do you actually play with, how do you actually open with? So in an interesting way, like, I don't know, it's like a concept of God or something, but I do feel it's like there is a love that permeates all of it. And it's not necessarily the pain that we go through, but potentially the alchemy that's part of that.
Absolutely. And I just love what you said there is, you know, is how can we not be in opposition with it and come back into, you know, that wholeness. The cosmic joke is, what do I want to say? You know, it's funny, my daughter asked me, she mentioned karma yesterday, and I said, what do you think karma means? And she said, it's, well, if you do something bad will happen to you. And, you know, and I was like, maybe it's more than that. And you know, and we opened up this conversation about what karma is, and I feel like that there's, and I'm in complete agreement, is that the trauma that we go through, and I've never been bitter or I've never had blame, you know, and a lot of people, I would come from an abusive background, and in my childhood, and then in my own relationship as a young adult. And a few years ago, my ex passed away, and when it was I felt it was really bizarre. It really shook me, it was funny, you know, telling quite a few, you know, I didn't tell heaps of people, but you know, when I had conversations with friends, a lot of people said karma's a bitch, that's karma for you. And I was like, no, I don't feel that. I don't hate him. And I never had that dance with him. I never felt that hatred. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because so many people have that hatred and blame in trauma, how do people move on from that? Because I find that you can't dance in that divine play, you know, and yeah, when you're holding on to that, what's your feeling on that?
Well, it's like one of those pieces that I find is really an important piece around that is that if there's hatred and anger present, that's what's there. It needs to be fully welcomed.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between I'm going to project this out and hurt the people around me and I'm going to use it as a weapon versus actually, you know what, there might be part of you that's really like pissed off and angry and hateful. And that's actually not an obstacle to your freedom. It's the actual way through. It's the process of pressure and the alchemization. It's that when we actually are in resistance to what is and we don't have love for our emotional body or know how to actually have tools or embodiment to move through that stuff, that's when it festers. That's when it becomes really toxic. And getting to that place of play with whatever it is, you know, it's this piece of when I see people that are in trauma and they don't have tools and they don't have the stuff, like none of us, I believe, have really been that educated on how to deal with some of the conditioning about being human. Yeah. And that includes sexuality and sexual trauma and all the sorts of stuff, the layers of conditioning that we have around how we should look or be or express ourselves, or when you're too much or not, like all of these pieces that are kind of insidious in our societies that hold us in like a holding pattern of fuck, I better be perfect or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There is absolute gold in being able to actually like sit with and be with and embody and move through and essentially make love to the part that's fucking angry and full of hatred and rage and like take it all the way in. And like there's lessons, there's gold, there's juice in it. It's like what I feel, and even that karmic thing, I've sat with that word karma for quite a bit, and what I feel around this word karma, and it's like, I'm sure there's many different ways to understand it, but one of the ways that I feel it resonates with me around the word karma is that it's a lesson to be learnt, and until the lesson is learnt, then it keeps repeating itself. And so whether that's like a lesson of having compassion for people when they're like angry because you actually need to have compassion for yourself that way, or whether it's like forgiveness, or maybe it's actually like whatever it is that's your own lesson around it. Unless you actually get the gold, you're going to keep getting like the rat wheel of it. And that's what I feel like is like, in a weird way, it's like a karma, you know, and I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. If I think it's like you just get to sit the same class over and over again until you get it, until you get the gold, and then you just don't have to run that same programming anymore. You know? But I definitely feel like there is gold in all of it. And so the more, I mean, when I first started all of this work, I was like 22. I was pretty young. I'm 35 now, so I've been doing it for 13 years. So first and foremost, like as a guinea pig for my own life and working through my own shit and like having to sit in some of the core, most uncomfortable stuff. But then it means that I can also now hold space for others in that and have another level of lived in, embodied kind of, I get it. Yes. And, you know, when I first sort of started on this path, I thought, oh, well, it's about being positive. You know, I've got to like not just be in the negative slump of like feeling all this stuff and getting bogged down by it. I've just got to, you know, be loving and be open and, you know, all of this stuff. And behind closed doors, like I was an angry little fucking gremlin. Like with my partner who could hold space for it, but no one else actually knew me because what they knew was the perfected version of me that I would show. And then people would say, oh, you're always so joyful, or you're always so loving. And I'd walk away feeling empty or disconnected or like, but like they don't see me, because actually I was terrified of intimacy. I was terrified of intimacy, not with the parts that I felt were pretty lovely and people were like approved of and they were magnetized towards me because I was super like, you know, I can connect with people and all of that.
Yeah.
But for the parts of me that felt like not integrated, unpretty, all of those parts,
Yeah.
and actually what I feel, you know, over all of those years that I've been doing all of this work,
Yeah.
through coming crashing down and having to be in vulnerability and all my world crumbling apart,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is actually equals intimacy. It equals connection, vulnerability, and even the messy parts are what connects us.
Yeah.
It's not what separates us, it's actually what connects us.
Yes.
And that includes the parts that are like traumatized or that haven't been integrated. If we can not project them out, but actually own them within ourselves, there's a way that then that generates connection. It has people feeling connected and knowing you. It's relatable, it's real, it's like our human nature. And that piece, I think, is probably the biggest piece that's missing in our society, why there's such a connection deficit in our society, because we're all fucking busy trying to be perfect, trying to fit into the narrative of whatever, and then behind closed doors all struggling in very fucking similar ways and feeling shame about it, which is insane to me, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, long-winded answer, but yes.
Oh, and I love that. I love everything you said, and it's so true. It's the very thing that connects us. Like, it's all those bits, and it's beautiful. And what part, I know embodiment and dance is such a big part of your work. What role does embodiment and dance have in this dance with dualism, let's say?
Well, yeah, like good question. So in my history, some of the things that I studied or that I deeply dove into, the first bit for me was always dance. Like I've been dancing since before I could walk.
Yeah.
And I studied belly dance, I think, when I was 13 or 14. And that was something that wasn't just about performing. It was about breath. It was about the sacredness of the feminine. It was like the woman that I had as my teacher, she was really out there and quite amazing as a human. And she would talk about the initiation of that dance being like a feminine embodiment practice. She wasn't just about like, okay, we'll just like smile and do the movements. It's like, actually you need to fucking breathe and feel your belly, feel your breath, like life moving through you. And you know, that's been a major piece of allowing my expression to come out. I remember being, you know, younger and being like, okay, so I can actually express part of my sensuality, my sexuality this way.
Yeah.
And then I did a lot of work around like different traumas and stuff when I was about 22. I started doing deep work around this disconnection from my heart and my sex.
Yeah.
And being very sexually active, but also feeling very disconnected from my heart.
Yeah.
And so people that know me now have no idea how I was before, but I was very like, you know, open in my sexuality and closed in my heart, disconnected. I didn't feel like I could really let people in and see me and love me. And that was actually one of the biggest catalysts, was letting love in.
Yes.
It's huge.
Yes.
I actually felt, I felt almost like a deep level of repulsion to loving availability in my life and turn on to things that were actually unhealthy to me.
Yeah.
That's been a huge part of my story, part of my history. And, you know, doing sexuality and all of those different aspects as well. I had a deep dive into female sexuality and all of that stuff, and spiritual connections, which is where I got my name Ramya from. And what I found was that it was almost like these 3 aspects or these 4 aspects were compartmentalized. Like I'd go somewhere for the embodiment and the dance, you know, I'd go on the dance floor, I'd have some like ecstatic expression or whatever, or I'd go out clubbing or whatever, there'd be this way of expressing. And then I'd go over here and do my sexuality and my sensuality, and we'd have these like deep openings and connected pieces. And then I'd go somewhere else for my trauma, and there was a different kind of expectation or a different way people would show up in that space that wouldn't necessarily have like sexuality woven into it, or it wouldn't have dance woven into it. And the same with the spirituality, would be like, we'd be doing this deep spiritual work and yet it wasn't integrated. So for me, what I found is that it's like the mind, the heart, and the body are all intrinsically linked. So I watch people that do a lot of like talking and they like process their stuff mentally, and that's, I think, an important piece. It's really important. And it can only go so far, because if it's just talking about it, my experience personally was I could run rings around any therapist, and I could talk my way around anything. I could understand concepts, but I was emotionally stunted and I felt trapped in my body. So there was that aspect, and then there's the feeling emotions, and I could move through emotional stuff, but then there was my body and my sexuality that felt like it was almost, these are the emotions, this is the mind, and my sex and my body are over here somewhere. And so for me, including embodiment, because your body's imprinting is quite somatic. So you have body muscle memory around every experience that you have in your life, and therefore also if you work with the breath and with the body and with the sensations that are there, you get to free up the dam and open up all of the channels. So that includes sexually, if there's experiences that have been shut down, or there's been shame, or there's been disconnect around that. It's often linked with trauma or with emotions that are blocked. So they're not separate, and the key and the gateway is in the body.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's like the mind gets on board to understand, okay, we're going to do some practices, we're going to dive into our body. It might feel a bit unknown or a bit uncomfortable. We might have some tears or some rage or some pleasure or some things that activate. But also what's possible for people when they start to open with the body and then integrate with the mind, integrate with the heart. It's not that they're not relevant. It's just that the body is like a major gateway for freedom. And so to be able to have embodiment practices and want to open to your desires, or open to your vision for your life or your future or whatever it is, or to create more intimacy or to connect with others, there is a piece around being comfortable in your skin, comfortable in your embodiment, because you're okay with what comes and what goes. It's okay to feel, it's okay to like open with it. You're in relationship and the dance with your body, what lives inside it, which is your feeling nature, your feminine. So for me, embodiment is the glue. It's the piece. If that's not been explored yet, or if that's not been tapped into yet. Also, what I noticed is if people have done other bits of work, they've done all the emotional stuff, like all of this stuff, the moment they start to like do the embodiment, it all just goes like it all kind of like drops into alignment.
True. Absolutely. I love that, and I was just like, oh, I was there with you. I was like, oh, come back. There's a piece there that I want to pick back up on, and the embodiment, piece, and it is absolutely the glue to it. I feel like there's a lot of people, okay, can you be embodied without fully embodying your sexuality?
Look, I think that when I think about that, I think about the infinite nature of our relationship or dance with ourselves. It's like when I think about fully embodied, I think about, can you know the infinite chambers of your whole entire being and be embodied in them all the time in every moment?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I think it's like incremental.
Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely levels of embodiment where, you know, you might have studied engineering, and you might actually be really like grounded and learned in that modality, that whatever that is, and there's an embodied kind of, I've practically done that for many years and that's my thing.
Yes.
There's like an embodiment in what that is.
Yes.
That person might be completely disembodied around relationships, for instance. They might not know how to do intimacy. They might feel quite lonely and separated. I feel like it's similar with our dance with ourselves. Like, I think there's infinite parts of ourselves that we can get to know. And I'm still often surprised that I get different aspects of myself online. I'm like, whoa, I haven't met this part of myself.
Yeah.
And for me to be fully embodied with that part, it's just, it's timing, and it's like, it's a practice and it's a process of getting to know yourself. And it's kind of like one of the metaphors that I use. It's like having two teams, and one of the teams is like, you know, think about like a football team. I don't really know football much, but like one side of the team is like, they're the team members that you know really well, and they're the ones that have got a lot of approval. You pull them off off the sidelines often. You kind of know, like, everyone's cheering for them. They know that part of the team. So you often will probably employ them more in your psyche, in your dance. And then you've got the opposition team, which are all of the other parts that maybe you don't spend much time with. You see them and you kind of reject them. You don't want to like get to know them. You're a bit like, they're a shitty team. I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
And through this dance, actually recognizing, hang on, there's no two separate teams. Actually, they're all my team.
Yes.
This one is like probably fighting me a lot more because they haven't integrated.
Yeah.
And so it's actually going, oh, like, I can start to learn to know about this one that's rageful and hateful. Yeah. And actually, often it's holding a point because it's trying to protect us. And actually, its whole role is like creating safety or wants us to be our greatest, but it's misunderstood and it's not integrated. And actually, the position description that it got when you were 5 or when you were 10 years old, pretty outdated, and it's just running rampant, trying to like figure out how to keep you safe, and instead just getting rejected. So it's like those parts, when you start to bring them back online, then you start to work with them. It's kind of like inner marriage counseling within your own psyche. And from that process, the embodiment starts to drop in more. So it's not like, I don't think that there's an ultimate end goal like with that process.
That's
right. And I do think it's the same with sexuality. So, someone can be really embodied in their heart and in their ability to care for people, but they just feel numb or disconnected in their sex. And so that might be that there's like different stuff that needs to be cleared out from the past, or, beliefs that they've had, or even cultural conditioning or shame around that. And that can be held in the body, and it's a dance. And it's like, one thing that I feel really resonant with is like this concept of expansion and contraction. Sometimes you might feel really expanded and open and embodied and good, and other times you might feel completely disembodied and like shut down and disconnected. It's like the breath in and out. It's like the heart beating. It's a natural flow, like it's an ebb and flow. And I guess the idea is that the more you get into relationship, into the dance with yourself, then the more it's actually like an embodied experience, becomes like more natural, becomes like an easier, it's like if you've been riding a horse for a long period of time, you might just hop on it and it's natural. Versus like if you're like, oh shit, I don't know how to do this thing. It's pretty clunky. It doesn't mean that stuff won't come up, but you will have some like depth and range to know how to stay with yourself in that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I love that. And that's, what comes to mind is, we know that, there's an evolution of our consciousness, that, it's not done, and that's the spiral of our consciousness. And it's the same thing applies for our embodiment as well. It's the evolution of our embodiment that's a continual journey, which I really like. The sound of, when we bring all these parts together within ourselves, and you work, I want to say heavily, but that's just for want of a better word, heavily with the feminine, and you talk about the unedited feminine. What is your view on the masculine then, and bringing in that peace in equal balance? And so where the undertone to this is, what I'm thinking is, you're so all encompassing of all things, and so the masculine has to be one element to that. How do we honor that without, like a lot of people are saying, they want to crush the patriarchy, or they want to, like they talk about in the feminine world, the masculine sometimes can be spoken about in a really negative way. So how can we begin to flip the lid in understanding that it's actually absolutely beautiful? And so what have you got to say on that?
Oh, I love that question. I can feel, even when you said the words, you're like, there's this almost in the feminine space, this want to crush the patriarchy. I could feel like, oh, my heart, this like sadness in my heart.
Yes.
Wow, like,
Yeah.
actually such an important piece that again, it's the relationship dance.
Yeah.
And one thing that I feel like zeroes in on it so beautifully is that it's like masculine without the feminine, without the heart, is like high-rise buildings with no heart.
Yeah.
It's like this like productivity and just getting shit done, and people are numbers and all that stuff. But similarly, the feminine without any masculine is absolute and utter chaos.
Yes.
Like, it's chaos, and also ineffective chaos.
Yeah.
I feel it's like they actually work together.
Yeah.
When I feel most surrendered and opened and free in my feminine, when I have a safe house or room or space, my finances are taken care of, the people around me, I have clear lines of communication and connection, I've taken action on the things that matter to me. It's like there's this intimate link between healthy feminine and healthy masculine, and actually the patriarchy is not, it's like it's been given a bad rap, because I actually think that the masculine has been somehow, the ideas of masculine have been linked into the unhealthy egoic version of that. Sort of similar to if someone thinks about the feminine being this raging, PMSing, out of control woman who doesn't give a shit about her impact. She just wants to lash out on everybody. Some of us might have had that experience where we've just let all of our shit just vomit out all over everything. That's a version of the feminine. It's like a young version of the feminine. It's not an integrated, healthy version of the feminine. It's the same with the masculine, where it's like, I don't care about anybody. I'm just, getting the results and doing the thing, and dry humping reality just so I can get my purpose or my need across. Those are representations, aspects of unintegrated, young aspects of feminine and masculine. Which is what the patriarchy's been given a rap on, going, that's masculine. And that is not my experience of healthy, integrated masculine. for a king to be a king, he needs his heart intact and he needs to have his queen fully in his heart.
Yeah.
And my experience is like when masculine's healthy, he absolutely cares about service, about protecting and providing and creating spaces where they feel safe. You know, all of that stuff actually brings the masculine alive.
Absolutely.
You know? And I think that I'm going to go like into a little bit more around what I feel is such a travesty around the masculine, is that I actually feel like for men, and this is when I was like teaching men going into their feminine, I felt so passionately about initiating men into their healthy feminine, because I actually think that for a man, you know, it's one thing for women to dive into our feminine, to start to claim our essence and to do all of this stuff. I think it's really important that we do, that we have a relationship with our heart, with our feeling nature, with our feminine.
Yeah.
And there is a way that women have a little bit more permission to do that.
Yeah.
There is a way that, even though I still think women are like being pushed into their unhealthy masculine and whatever, you know, like I can do, you know, I think one of the sayings that I heard was I can outman any man. And part of me is just like, whoa, like just hurts, because I'm like, whoa, like how can we actually exist when we're trying to annihilate one another?
Exactly.
But so like a woman being able to go into that is one aspect, and I think it's really important. But there is a way that it's like, it's seen as positive, it's seen as good, it's seen as healthy for a woman to be in her sexuality and her feeling, her flow, and her radiance, all of that stuff. So there is a level, even though there's still shame around it and there's all of that stuff, the level of societal permission granted to that. When I think about men and what men are having to endure, I think about the feminine that's been taken from our society. I don't just think about women being oppressed. I think about the feminine that has been oppressed in every single woman and every single man, especially men, because they've been given and fed this narrative of young, immature masculine, and that's what you need. That's the bench press that you need to make so that you're good enough, that you're valuable, that you're worth something, blah, 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 all of that stuff. And by the way, don't cry, don't show your vulnerability, don't be, you know, don't have needs or feelings, don't soften, be able to do it all yourself. So the suicide rates, depression rates, all of that stuff through the roof, because there's this narrative of like, either go into the ego around your masculine, or if you don't, then you're a failure. And either way, whatever you're feeling or experiencing, it's shameful for you to exist. Don't have feelings, which is not just, feminine is not just male body or female body. Feminine is our feeling nature. Little boys, little girls, they need hugs. There's no difference between when we're little. It's just our conditioning. And so when emotions inevitably come up, when a man needs to be innovative, innovation is vulnerable as fuck. You know, if he's going to lead, that's vulnerable. All of these pieces, and yet it's vulnerable, but we can't talk about it.
That's right.
If you want to put yourself out there, then the fear of failing, and God forbid if you do fail, like all of that stuff, there's not a lot of, I think, societal conditioning that supports men to be in their healthy feminine.
Absolutely.
They've had it robbed for them, maybe even way worse. And so when I think about the unhealthy patriarchy, I think about the suppression of feminine, and I think about men suffering just as much, if not even more, because of that. And I don't think that patriarchy actually necessarily, in its essence, has to be a negative thing. You know, it's like, it's just the way that it's associated.
Absolutely. I agree. And it's, you know, something that I love, the mutable laws, and you know, and I feel like, you know, so much of what you talk about is moving beyond gender, you know, and just getting to that other side, where just realizing that we're all one anyway, you know, and we both have those parts of ourselves. And what I really love about what you just said is, like, it just, for me, it just opened up this new permission of compassion, which is really beautiful, you know. And that's, and because at times I can feel angry, like it's just, you know, when it's just, you know, certain, you know, gender things, that the gender roles that, you know, kind of fall upon men and women, and I can get angry at them, and often angry at men, because it's like, duh, you know. Or when I say men, like, you know, 9 times out of 10 it's probably my partner. And let's face it, let's be real. But it is, I love what you just said, is just because it got robbed from them too. And that's a really beautiful thing, I think, for us to remember. And I feel like that compassion then leads to forgiveness, which is a really, you know, I think is an important piece to that puzzle as well. Yeah. You talk about the unedited feminine. What is that? And then on the flip side, what is the edited feminine?
Yeah, I guess it's sort of like unedited. When I think about that, it means our rawness and our realness and our aliveness, what's here in the moment. It's before we've had a chance to veneer and gloss over and present a certain version. It's the raw realness of being human. And there's a way that, like, again, with the feminine being our feeling nature, if we're trying to almost just show like this little bit, I'll just show this tiny little bit of myself. It's what I shared with you around when I first sort of started diving into this. There were parts of me that were okay, and parts of me that weren't. And so I would hide myself away and disconnect from society, because I was essentially in the process of editing that. I was editing who I was so that I could come out perfected. And then, God forbid, because I'm actually imperfect, I would pull away from connection. I would not let people see me. I would feel disconnected and alone, isolated. But actually it's in the, like, kind of in the rawness, in the unedited realness, like, oh wow, you're human like I am. And I can't tell you, I think one of the biggest things that I see in people coming together in all of the spaces that I've been part of, where I've facilitated, where I've created and also received from, it's in people's the imperfections that there is perfection. They're like the raw, real expression. And then it's like 9 times out of 10, when somebody's actually real, other people can relate.
Definitely. Absolutely.
And I think it's also a dance, though, for me, around trusting and knowing myself about who and what and where to share my unedited vulnerability, all of that stuff. Not about just opening up and expressing everything with everybody. And that was a piece for me to really get, that it's not just about when you start to open into your vulnerability, sharing vulnerably with everybody and expecting everyone to be a safe place for you to land that. That's not been my experience. And so getting your emotional body and your inner compass online so that you can feel into, does this scenario feel healthy and safe for me, or does this feel like I'm not going to be respected and cared about, and therefore re-entrenching that same pattern of disconnect or rejection or shame. Is why when I talk to people about coming into a sacred and set container, so workshop space is an example of that, depending on who's holding the space and the intention and the culture that's set in the space, the safety of the space, can either determine whether or not you actually can shift core stuff in a safe way, that people don't just go and repeat what's just happened, that there's agreements, there's these, and that's like the masculine container piece, right? Am I safe? Is my feminine safe to let go and to share and to express and all of these pieces that I need so that I can create a new blueprint of safety and connection in myself and then become more of who I am?
Yes.
Or is there no permission, there's no privacy, there's no safety? Actually, my history tells me with this person or these people that this has been my experience, things don't get honored. Actually, I am going to choose containment and not share it here.
Yes.
But there's a difference between containing everything and never actually expressing it, and it eating you up, versus discernment and being like, I will share this bit here and not that bit, but I will also recognize that it's important for me to be seen. It's important for me to be held and loved and cherished as I am, and I will choose those connections wisely. You know? So yeah, I don't know if that sits with you, but it's
no, it's I'm leaning in because I'm like, I want to ask you, like, how then, if, you know, someone's watching going, okay, like, I want to begin to be familiar and aware when I'm just about to edit myself. And what can they do to then, you know, what's the next step after that?
Well, I guess the first piece is, and this is where it comes back to for me, the first piece is being true to yourself. So one really simple way to actually connect with that, it might not actually be that there's an outward thing that needs to happen. It's actually like, one of the things that I feel is really important is like, you can put your hands on your body. Actually, you know, if you're in the middle of a work environment, or you're even in the middle of a conversation and you're not sure, if you're starting to feel a bit like, I don't know if I'm about to like override myself, or maybe you just have, and wanting to check back in, even go to the toilet or go into your car or somewhere where you actually have a moment, you put your hands on your body and just check. Like, come back into a connection, put your hands on your belly, which is your kind of power center. It's also like, for me as a woman, that's where I feel my gut instinct, and also my emotions and stuff can stir in there. My truth, and like the heart, like, what are you feeling right now? What's true for you? And then just acknowledging, like, what do I need? So, right now I'm feeling a bit scared. Like, I'm scared of getting rejected, or, you know, it could be right in the middle of like being sexual with somebody and they're like really like turned on and ready to go, and then there's something in you that's like, you know, and rather than just going with it and overriding, which can take practice and compassion and all of that, it could just be, hey, can I just have a moment for like a second just to tune in with what I need, what I'm feeling? And that could be like, oh, I just want to be held for a little bit longer. Or just even, I'm feeling scared right now. Like, I don't even know if I can speak what I need. And then it could just be acknowledging that within yourself. You're like, okay, thank you. I acknowledge that. And just that could be enough to like give you some checkpoint. Am I being true to myself and my own truth? And that could be that you don't actually know the answer. If someone's saying, I want an answer from you, could be like, actually, I don't know the answer right now. And that's being true. You know? And so this is the piece where I find that the more that internal relationship, the more that trust builds, then even if you have edited yourself, you can take it and like start to work with it. Because then it's like, oh, cool, I noticed I compromised myself there. I noticed I was a little bit fake over there, and I was sort of like wanting them to like me, or whatever that was. And then instead of it being the thing that has you compromise or have to edit yourself or like lose part of your essence in that interaction, again, it's that piece of like taking the gold from it getting the growth from it and like, oh, cool. And it might actually unravel a whole deeper exploration.
Yeah.
You might have more that you need to get from that and do your work on, because maybe when you were 6 years old, there was some real core imprinting that you had around your dad, or something that made you not be able to speak your truth, or whatever it is. But with gentleness and love and being in the relationship dance with it, then more and more it becomes easier just to be true to your own truth, and that it doesn't have to be a violation to do so. It's like, okay, I'm just true to me. And I can feel that. And often I think when it's not busy being projected out on other people, or like blaming or whatever it is outside, if I can just sit in what's true and what's real for me, without even a lot of story around it, could just be, this is what's true for me, then people can feel that.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, if you're going to sit there going, I actually feel really scared or sad right now, you can't really argue with that. It's like, well, that's your truth, because that's your experience. Someone could try and go, no, you're not. But like, if you actually know yourself well enough, then you gauge for what you need and your authenticity. And what that might look like is that I notice when I go into these situations, I put on a front. You might actually like cultivate enough self-connection that then when you go into that situation, you might even speak it. You might actually be like, I notice that when I'm in this situation, I don't want to share this part of myself because I'm scared of being judged. I'm owning that and I'm loving that. And if that comes up, I give myself permission to be messy in it. You know, whatever it is, there's a very different frequency of when it's owned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. It's that just sitting with that truth. I think so many people feel like they can't, oh, I can't say that, or, I can't be like that. And it goes back to, as you were saying before, like, I recognize with these type of people, then, I'm this. And, you were talking before about, knowing what areas you can share parts of yourself and when you can't, sharing that unedited version of yourself, and making sure that you're in that safe container. I feel like in our industry, there's a lot of people that would say, well, you just only surround yourself by these particular people, or people who make you feel this way, and the thing about it is I don't feel like that's very realistic. We've got so many facets to who we are. We can't control, like as a parent, it's like, well, you've got, like your kids play sports, so you interact with these people, or you've got this, or, there's so many different parts that we have to, like it's life. It's life. So what would you say then for those people who are really wanting to be their most honest expression and really explore this unedited part of who they are, and also be realistic about life?
Yeah. Well, what I would say is that it's a dance, right? Again, it's that dance. And it's like this piece around, so imagine that you've got like younger parts, or like really more delicate parts of yourself. That ultimately your job is to create the safe container for them to get strong. So those like delicate parts, it might be certain aspects of you. And then you do discern what the nursery of that container is like. For those parts. As much as you can. And you still got life. You still got life coming. And maybe those delicate parts get exposed to life. And ultimately it's like, you are in the relationship dance of creating safety within yourself, such that it doesn't actually matter who you're around or with, that you feel good to be yourself. And it's like there's parts that are actually going to be more tender, and you might want to create a little bit more like a little seedling. If you don't actually put a little barrier around it, someone could just come and trample on it. depends on your psyche, you know, whatever parts that are more fragile.
Yeah.
Where the safety is important and understanding and having discernment around that's important. But you absolutely can't control what everybody is like. And actually, if you just have people that are agreeable to you and they're always like nice to you and all of this stuff, you're probably not going to grow. Half the shit that happens in your life is not probably going to be like that comfortable, but the uncomfortability are your growing pains. And so thank you to the people that do give us like friction and gusto and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not for me about removing myself from life. Actually, it's about fostering the parts that need a little bit more safety. And it's about creating ultimately the safety within myself.
Yeah.
And what that looks like is I'm safe enough in myself to know this part, I can, you know, I want to protect that part.
Yes.
I'm not just going to lay out all my cards for everybody, but I can still be myself.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
it's like there is this dance.
Yeah.
And more and more it becomes like more parts of us become integrated because they actually feel safe here.
Yes.
And it doesn't, you know, it's one of those things when I first started doing this work again, it was like I couldn't talk to anyone in my family about emotions.
Yeah.
Or the word love. You know, I had such an aversion to it.
Yeah.
And then I had to go through my own stuff around, they're going to like find it too much, or they're going to reject me, or they're going to blah, blah, blah. And then I got to the place within myself. They didn't change. They didn't do any other work. I got to the place within myself where I was actually okay, whether they liked it or they didn't like it. And I was okay to like speak my truth, to say I love you, whether they said it back or not.
Yeah.
And they do open up to me emotionally.
Yeah.
For as long as I was still grappling with it and it wasn't integrated in me yet, I would get pushed back.
Yes.
It's more like when you actually own it and integrate it, life does adjust. Not always, but definitely it shifted stuff in my family and my, you know, and now I can just talk about all the things.
Yeah.
It's actually not, I'm not at that stage still where it feels so, I'm in that incubation going, fuck, can I share this?
Yeah.
Am I okay with that? Like,
yeah.
Still pieces that feel uncomfortable and I would still grow with around certain people and my, you know, whatever. But that's an example of like when you start to own it and integrate it. And that's because I actually spent a lot of time with people that were in a lot of approval of my feelings, of my heart. And I would have like this dirty rage come up, or this, you know, deep shame or sexual trauma or whatever it was that would come up. And the response was a resounding, congratulations, it's coming up for freedom. Or what else do you got? Like, feel it, let it come. And that was such a paradigm shift for me.
Yeah.
Around like, there's actually people in approval. Oh, wow, this is what we do. We actually let it move.
Yeah.
And freedom in that. My family doesn't, you know, hasn't necessarily traditionally known that. That's cool. I'm going to be a stand for that. And then I will keep like sharing. And, you know, I'm also compassionate. I don't just, you know, I feel into the scenario and I don't just go, here's all my stuff, you know, but I can play with it now, you know, it's different.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And I think it's such an important piece that, you know, you've given us the how. You know, you've given us some choreo around how to dance, you know, kind of through that. So, you know, I feel like there's so many of us that are, you know, awakening into, you know, we're seeing that rise of who we really are and becoming courageous enough to, you know, put ourselves out there into the world. And so I think it's a really beautiful reminder for us. So thank you. We need to wrap up, but I've got one last question for you, and that is, what is turning you on right now?
What's turning me on right now?
Yeah.
As you said that, I could feel my whole like system light up. I was like, so good. One of my biggest turn-ons right now, and actually this is like such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Like just a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting there in meditation and I just had this real sense that like I've gone from overnight basically running everything in person And I was sitting here going, oh, I can't run things in person right now. There's lockdown, there's everything.
Yeah.
And I was sitting here meditating, and it was really like a resounding, strong, like opening in my heart around, I need to just give generously, do something that's for women to connect with themselves. Embodiment is so important, especially right now. And I could feel the parts of me that were like, oh, well, I don't know how to do that in terms of, you know, should I be charging money for this, or should I be doing it this way, or blah, blah, blah. And there was this real, like, strong, almost like a soul sense of, it doesn't actually matter. Just get out the way and give. Give it all. Give generously, just give it away. And it was like this, almost like being pushed aside, and life just being like, just do the thing. And I decided then and there, I was like, it's 7 days. It's got to be something 7 days. And so I created Sensual Awakening. Like, I already had that, you know, been facilitating that at festivals in New Zealand, Spirit Festival and a few things. But I put this thing on, and I just was like, 7 days of awakening your sensuality for women. And I offered it for free.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I've been doing this work for about 13 years.
Yeah.
And offering this piece for free as a gift to women to connect with their sensuality, have their embodiment, the different processes that were coming through every day, the shifts that were happening, and women being able to access it from all over the world.
Yeah.
My heart just felt so cracked wide open. And honestly, it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And there's this piece around, like, I've always done it for that reason, that I want people to benefit. I want people to have access to this work. And I still honestly deeply believe in the value of it.
Yeah.
But there was something in it for me around just the generosity and the giving and the connection and wanting people to have it.
Yeah.
It just opened up my whole life force, all my channel. I feel like so alive in it, and knowing that that's had such an impact. And there's women that couldn't have afforded it, that wouldn't have access to it. Like, I spoke to a woman who was like part of, like, she lost everything in the bushfires.
Yeah.
She is like, she was able to come and do it. And she's like a baby, like all these things. And I just, anyway, so yeah, it's like sparked this aliveness in me. And then, you know, obviously from that, I'm offering other things and different pieces, but it makes me realize, like, why I'm actually doing what I'm doing. That's what sets me alive. I'm like, if money wasn't an issue, if it wasn't for the money, what would I be doing? And that's what I sat with before I offered that. And I was like, I would be doing the exact same thing that I am doing. And I would want to be offering it with all my heart, because I know the impact of it, and I want women to have access to it, and I want men to have access to it. So yeah, that just happened, you know, like, it ended on Thursday. So yeah, I feel really alive about that. And then it does translate to the gifts that I give. It does translate to the workshops that I'm running that are monetized and all of that stuff. You know, I have a livelihood, and all of this stuff that I need to, it's like, I need to be resourced so that I can keep giving. I really honor that and recognize that.
Yeah.
But there's been this aliveness in me around this piece. And yeah, I also feel like alive in the offering. Like, I'm offering Liberated Woman coming up, and that's a 6-week online journey for women to connect with their foundations of their feminine, their masculine and sacred union, all of the pieces around their feeling nature, embodiment, and needs, and giving and receiving, and all of that stuff. So it's like healing the ancestral lines. Like, I feel really excited to be offering that. And I know that's going to be creating a lot of shift for women as well, and it has done. So I just, yeah, it feels really, I feel for the first time in my life, I feel like the most generous that I've ever felt.
Yeah. And
And so it's like, through these women being able to show up, through being able to give it, I actually feel like I received.
absolutely.
I have.
Absolutely.
And I've done some fucking work in my time, you know.
Yes, and that's it, exactly. And that's, you know, and that's, we talk about that at the Institute, and you know, we say how our service is our medicine, and and that's a beautiful place to operate from and to move and live and be, is, you know that you're on, that divine path, don't you? When it is your medicine, and that's, in giving, you're absolutely receiving. Beautiful. I was curious, when you talk about sensuality, and I know that that was the last question, but I wanted to know just one more. What's the difference for you with, what is the difference between sensuality and sexuality?
Well, sensuality, I feel like encompasses the whole of ourselves. I feel like it's our sense organs, it's our emotions, it's our whole life force, everything.
Yeah.
And it's our whole body as a sensual, awakened, like, aspect. It's our connection to our senses and the openness in that. And our sexuality, like, I feel like there are links for sure, because I feel sensuality, for me, it feels like a river flowing. It feels like the life force is flowing. It's the dance with the feelings, and like the waters, and like all of it is like part of that lover to all of the parts of itself. And sexuality for me, the sensuality may include like the sexual organs or not. Sensuality could also be like a sense of like foreplay. It could be like smelling the air, or even just seeing somebody and like being intimate. Like, there's like a way that if you're feeling in your body, that's the sensual kind of essence. Whereas sexuality, I feel like, includes the genitals, it includes the sexual organs, but I do feel like also sexuality is linked with the life force, and so our feeling nature and our life force are linked. So if you've got rage that's suppressed, and so is your passion, whatever, there's ways that our sexual energy, it's like when you're like having sex and you're opening your channels, you're opening your breath. It's also your tears, your rage, your pleasure, your all of that stuff coming through. So I feel like they do link in, whereas one could just be, you could be feeling sensual and connected just in dance, just in like whatever, whereas the sexual is like, you're focusing more on the sexual organs, or the sexual energy, or the the emotions that connect to that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been so lovely just to get a real understanding about who you are, and it's been beautiful just to witness you, and just get to know you. So I really feel the depth of the work that you do, and I really feel such deep resonance to that. It feels honouring. So thank you, and I invite anyone that is also feeling that resonance to go check out Jade's work, and begin to that exploration. But it's been so lovely. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who is watching and who will watch or listen to the replay. And I'll be back next week.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you for your grace and just asking the questions. Like, I feel you're like just gently, okay, yep, there's this piece, and I'm gonna like ask this one at this point, and you do it really well. So thank you so much for having me on the show. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone needs to find me on the Facebook world or anything, but I can, if you search Liberated Woman, and you find me on Facebook that way. So
beautiful. And I'll pop all the links to all your bits in the show notes as well. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.